Hi, my name is Cecil Walker,
And I am Adam Furler.
and this is Possibilities. Today we're going to be chatting about how to find motivation. So go ahead and enlighten us, Adam. How do we find motivation?
That's a good question. I think one of the things that I would start with is to say different people might find motivation differently. I think one of the things that we all have different personalities, we all have different things that kind of excite us or we find passion in. And so I think it's really valuable to be thinking about like what might work for me.
Mm-hmm.
So in that vein, one of the things that I think I might say is it begins with really how we talk a lot about in our own therapy, thinking about the end, keeping
Right.
the end in mind first. We call that the desired outcome, but I think you can call it anything. And in some sense, it's what do you want to achieve? What are you trying to get motivated
Right.
to do? And so I think in some sense, we have to make it more meaningful than just like, I want to lose 20 pounds or I want to eat better or I want to, get a new job. And so I think one of the ways that we do that is we have to say to ourselves, why do I want to do those things? What's behind that? If I want to lose 20 pounds, then perhaps that's like I want to feel good about myself.
Yeah.
I want to find confidence. If I want to get a new job, maybe that's like I want to align my life more with what I find I'm passionate about. And so I think oftentimes when we get to the why do I want to accomplish this thing, then it builds in meaning into why I'm doing what I'm doing. And on the hard days or on days where I don't feel so motivated to do something, I can remember the why am I doing this, and that can really change my perspective a bit.
Yeah, it's I think very clear in therapy when that why comes to the surface. Because like you're saying, when you talk about that outcome, the thing that they're trying to get done, and they say things like, I want to work out and lose 20 pounds, or I just want to like get this project done for work or something like that. That in and of itself isn't very motivating just by itself.
Mm-hmm.
Some people sometimes in some states can just get it done. But I think generally speaking, that's not motivating in and of itself. But when you kind of scratch a bit at the why and start to see some of that meaning surface, you can feel the gravity of that. Suddenly now there is infinite energy for whatever it takes to fulfill the thing that you're trying to do. And so if losing that 20 pounds, if working out every single day means you are fulfilling your potential, it means that you get to really like who you are, like yourself, like what you see when you look at yourself. That all of a sudden is there's no limit to that. You are willing to do anything to like yourself. How far any of us will go to feel like we're fulfilling our potential, we're being exactly who we were meant to be. I think it's when you start to look at the underbelly and you see that there's a lot here for why I'm trying to do the things that I'm trying to do.
Yeah, I think one of the things too that you kind of highlighted without really saying is that there's a difference too around being externally motivated and internally motivated. And oftentimes when we follow through in therapy and we say, in some sense, what difference would it make to you if you lost 20 pounds or you got a new job or whatever? Oftentimes then the emphasis shifts and it's then it would mean something about me.
Yeah.
I would be this kind of a person. I would be living within my purpose, and so all of a sudden it shifts to an internal focus. And I think when we make that shift from being externally motivated to being internally motivated, that's oftentimes where the motivation is more sustaining.
Yeah.
And I think we see that oftentimes a lot where people start to, in essence, make attributions about themselves and they start saying, well, then I would be this kind of a person, and that I want to be that kind of a person. I think that seems to make a big difference for people.
I think you're right. Moving along with this different ways of accessing the motivation that you need, I think another way is tapping into the version of yourself that is very capable of doing the task that you need to do, or even is very good at that task. The example I think of is when I'm stuck in my very like busy and stressed out kind of weekly routine, cleaning my home and doing tasks around home feel like that is just extra labor that I just don't have the energy for. I don't have the time for it. I don't want to do any of that. I feel very unmotivated to do that. But when I remember the like peace loving side of myself, the side of myself that likes doing simple tasks, that likes being just in the moment, taking it easy, not having to think too much, then doing those kind of chores around the house actually are really, really enticing to me. It's a nice break for me to be able to just wash dishes or vacuum or clean windows or something. It's so simple, so peaceful, and suddenly now I get to access that side of myself that enjoys those kinds of moments. But if I don't remember that, I would keep pushing that out of the way. I'll keep avoiding that as if it's something really, really undesirable, when really in the moment it's usually something very desirable. It's something that I start to look for more things to clean and more tasks to do to extend that peace that I feel.
Yeah, and I think as you were talking, something came to my mind, which I hadn't really thought about it in this way before, but it's this psychological component of state conditioned learning, right? And we oftentimes hear about this or think about it as when I'm going to do my homework or when I want to learn something, I set up the conditions where I potentially sit at a desk or I sit in the same place every time. I make sure that the light looks the same way every time. Maybe if I'm going to listen to music, I listen to music that's like soft and quiet rather than something that's distracting.
Yeah.
So I set up the conditions so that when I go to this particular place, I've trained my body to think about this being a particular way. And another example might be if I'm trying to go to sleep, right? We all have heard those things we've all read online, like you're not supposed to look at screens 3 hours before, you're not supposed to eat anything 2 hours before. Go through a routine where you do meditation or something slow, you slow your body down and kind of teach your body, I'm winding down to go to sleep. And I think if we take that concept of state conditioned learning and we apply it to motivation as well, we might be able to set up the conditions where we get motivated to do something. So perhaps, we do something that we enjoy doing, or and going along with what you were saying about that version of you, I do things to remind myself, I'm this version of myself, or I'm going to utilize this version of myself today. Whatever version that is, if it's the peaceful version and that peaceful version is going to carry you through to clean or whatever, or if it's like the excited version that's going to make me go out there and do something that I don't particularly want to do, we could set up the conditions in order to make that more likely to occur.
Yeah. That reminds me of how common it is that people sometimes forget the different versions of themselves that are available to them too. Somehow we make the mistake of compartmentalizing the strengths that we have, the versions of ourselves that can show up in different areas of our lives. I very much remember in undergrad, well, for one, I in general felt a little bit out of place in college, just feeling like, unsure of, do I belong here? This is much more education than someone from my family is very used to being inside of and accessing. So is this the place for me? Do I have what it takes? That kind of stuff. And on top of that, I also didn't like a lot of like full attention, like being at the front of the classroom or something, or giving a presentation. And so when things like that would come up, I could sometimes feel myself slipping into the version of me who was unsure of if I belonged, to the version of me who felt like I might shrink, underneath the gaze of other people, especially if I was assuming they were smarter than me, they knew more than me. But then I could also remember, like you're saying, I could access this other state of myself, this other version of myself. One of my majors was piano, and I would spend hours and hours practicing, trying to perfect things and make them sound just right. And when I would go on stage and perform those things, sometimes we'd be graded on how we perform. We would have panels watching how we perform. Sometimes it'd be a full live audience when we perform. Nothing ever stopped me from giving the fullness of what I had practiced. Nothing ever stopped me from playing as confidently as possible exactly what I had intended to play and what I knew how to play. And so when I could remember that was a part of myself, speaking in front of 20 students or something like that, and my professor, that's nothing compared to what I had consistently done with piano on a stage, where it didn't matter who was in the audience, it didn't matter how much I thought of what they thought. All that really mattered was me focusing on fulfilling what I knew was kind of resting inside of what I had practiced, what I had known, what I had really built up well before I was out there on that stage.
Yeah, I think that's really brilliant, just to think about the different versions. And I think if we take that idea, right, so we've talked about like keeping in mind the end or the why are you doing this, and transitioned a little bit into, you know, thinking about what version of you is capable of doing this. And I think if we take those two concepts and transition once again, I think another thing that might help motivate people is remembering or involving other people, right? I think sometimes other people see versions of us that we don't see, and they might be able to remind us of what they see. And I think sometimes this shows up in the form of like an accountability partner, where I say to somebody, hey, will you help me keep track of, you know, what I eat? Or can we go work out together every day? Or will you make sure, call me up and say, hey, did you practice such and such today? And so sometimes it's just an accountability partner. But I think what you're talking about too is the idea of a version of you. People who are close to me, people who care about me, they are invested in my success. And so when I let them know what I'm trying to achieve, when I let them know what I'm trying to accomplish, they then can send love and care and compassion. And I think sometimes it's hard because we have to make ourselves really vulnerable, and we have to say, in some sense, I'm not the version of myself that I want to be. I'm trying to become the version of myself that I want to be. And by making yourself vulnerable in that way and involving other people, in essence, you're kind of pulling on their strength. They're helping you. And then as you go, you start to see what you are capable of. You start to see what they might see in you. And so I think sometimes it might just be, can you hold me accountable to the version of myself I know I can be? And at other times, I think it might be, can you help me achieve the version of myself that I want to be? I think one of the things that, you know, as human beings, we're such relational beings. We draw energy from each other. We can accomplish more when we work together. If you can lift 50 pounds and I can lift 50 pounds, somehow together we can actually lift more than 100 pounds. And I think oftentimes as we're striving to accomplish or become that version of ourselves that we want to be, it's actually much more attainable if we have somebody walking alongside of us along the way.
Yeah. What that says to me is not only then should you put yourself in the position to where your ambitions, your desires are visible to other people, you should also have the other people who are around you be the kind of people that you want to pull your desires in the right direction. Eliot says quite frequently how hard it is to be vulnerable in a way that you make it known what you want to accomplish.
Yes.
And I think that's very true. But if you also get an audience for that, the social context around you to where you can present that desire and it be somehow compatible with what is valuable in this circle of people, and hopefully for something good, something that pulls you in a good direction, there's a lot to gain from that. I think it drives you, it pushes you. Now suddenly you need to do whatever it takes to seem like you're working towards that or building on that. You're progressing in some kind of a way. And the second component to that really makes me think of is sometimes we can forget what might actually be unique or very capable about us. And when we think of other people's perspectives of us, it can very much remind us. You know, everyone has loved ones. Everyone has someone who sees them with some kind of positive regard. And maybe we might be missing things in ourselves, you know, but if we ask ourselves, why does such and such person think I can do this? Why does such and such person think I'm the kind of person who is worthy of their attention, worthy of their praise? Why does, you know, my younger sibling think I'm responsible? Why do they think I'm responsible when I see myself as slacking off all the time? You know, you can start to tap into that and remind yourself, well, maybe there are some things that actually speak to how I can get this done. I know how to do this thing that I might not have felt the motivation for before.
Yeah, I think that's really valuable, and I think sometimes too, being an introvert, sometimes it's hard to reach out to other people or to say, hey, will you help me do such and such? And I don't think that the network of people that you have needs to be big, right? Or that you don't need to share, you know, your hopes and dreams with 50 people or post it on social media or whatever. But I think finding one or two close people can really, like you said, I can really draw from them what they see in me. And that can be a real motivating factor to say, in some sense, I don't want to let them down, or I want to live up to what it is that they think I'm
Yeah.
capable of.
Yeah. Either way, I think that's a really powerful thing too. All these things we're describing, I think you start to realize when you tap into that, there is so much resource and fuel that's in that. That you stop questioning, how am I going to do this thing that I need to do? Where am I going to find the energy that it takes to do the thing that I need to do? It starts to become almost like automatic or obvious that thing is just going to happen because it's connected to these things.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and you just used a word, and I think this might help us transition to another way to kind of achieve motivation. But you use this word energy, and kind of getting the energy. And I think sometimes achieving motivation or kind of finding the motivation does feel like, I just don't have the energy, or I want to get more energy. What do you say about how do you achieve more energy? How do you build energy?
I think that inherently speaks towards this thing you and I talk about all the time, this upward spiral of positive emotion. When you start to feel and experience the positive aspects of doing the things that you want to do, seeing yourself do something, even if it's something small or something that's just a partial puzzle piece of the larger picture, the feelings that you get with that, the positive emotion that you get with that reinforces it and tells you, do more of that, go in that direction. This is doable, this feels good, this is good for you. And so suddenly it starts to cost less, I think, to go in that direction. It becomes easier to do that. And as you spiral upwards and upwards, it almost exponentially becomes easier and easier and more enjoyable in being that kind of a person and doing those kinds of tasks.
Yeah, what's really fascinating about that too is it makes me think about, like, I could purposefully do something to help myself feel positive emotion.
Yeah.
And maybe that's completely unrelated to the task or that I want to do or the thing that I want to be motivated about. But if I can build positive emotion, maybe I get to do something that I really like. I can carry that energy that's been built over here and then get into something else that I really think I need to do or that I should do. And I think about it almost like that reward system, right? Oftentimes we think, okay, I'm going to push through this drudgery and then I'm going to reward myself. And in some sense, I feel like what you're saying is it's almost like you're flipping it on its head and you say, like, get the reward first, do something that you really like, and then use the energy or the motivation that you have from that and push into something that you don't have as much energy to do. And it will turn into this upward spiral of like, oh, I'm doing this thing that I didn't think I could. And now I feel even more motivated to keep doing it or to accomplish it all the way.
Yeah, no, I think you're right. I don't know where this image of, this ideal person who just pulls himself out of the ground and does hard things nakedly, without any type of extra sense of things feeling easier or good or positive in any kind of way. They just put their feet to the pavement and do whatever the thing it is that they need to do. I feel like that's the ideal thing that so many people aspire to. But what we're describing here is something of the opposite, of putting yourself in a position to where you feel more capable of, you feel better about yourself and this task at hand. And that makes it that much more doable for you. A potential common critique of our solution-focused conversation sometimes is, why are you just talking about these positive things? Why are you ignoring the problem and trying to zoom in so much on what's good and what's working and what they might have to look at that's positive in their life or that's positive in their situation? And I don't see that as I think that's an oversimplification of what's happening. But I think someone who is able to take a second to remember how they do the things they do, why they do the things they do, what reasons they have to be the kind of person they want to be, what things they might have forgotten about, what they are capable of. That person sounds like they are fully stocked and ready to do any of the things that they want to do, compared to someone else who is at ground zero thinking, this may or may not work, I may or may not have what it takes, and I have some reasons to give up actually, because this is uncomfortable and I don't want to do it. I think that first person is much more likely to do the things that they want to do and feel like they have the energy for those things.
Yeah, I think that's really brilliant, actually. And I think so we probably should wrap up, but just want to say we've gone through pretty quickly at least 4 different ways, right, that people could build up motivation. And I think kind of just looping back to where we began, each person is going to be different. One strategy might work for one person, a different strategy might work for somebody else. Combining these strategies might help. And so I think that's one of the things that we really want to highlight, is to say motivation is an individual thing. So you really have to find what helps you and motivate you. And we would love to hear about that. If you have additional thoughts that maybe we didn't cover about what's motivating or how you find motivation, leave a comment here. If you feel like there's somebody in your life that could really benefit from this conversation about motivation, please share this with them. We would love to get this message out to more people. And so if you could like this video, if you could share this video, we would really appreciate it. And we hope to learn from you as well about what motivates you.